technologies built on other technologies, built on other technologies. You've got, your processor, which processors have had bugs in the past, like bugs in the hardware. And, on top of that, you've got compilers, which have had bugs in the past. And, it's the kind of the famous cope for programmers. It's like, oh, the compiler must have messed something up, right? The compiler's trolling me. Well, sometimes the compiler actually does troll you. And so the mythical compiler bug is actually a thing that has existed and might be there. You never quite know. And then on top of that, you have the operating system, right? And the operating system, is crashing and doing strange things all the time. And your applications have to be built atop the operating system. But on top of the operating system, you might have a middleware like SDL. You have to hope they don't have any bugs, but they release patches every once in a while that suggests they're finding bugs, right? And then of course, you get to eventually your code, which, of course, the code we write, we know how buggy our code is. It feels like modern technology is kind of this big tower that we built atop quicksand, and each floor has a different, slightly scuffed material, right? And it only takes like one little crack in one of the early floors to just kind of mess everything up. It's kind of a miracle any of these programs run. It really is. But it's a miracle of testing and discipline and automated testing, and that a lot of those big, really important bugs at every layer can kind of be found quickly and resolved. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to EECS 440. This is your first lecture of the week. This is your last lecture of the week. This is your Wednesday lecture. Today we're going to finish up our talk on business, XR and business, a very, very fun topic. We might end a little bit early. But on Monday, we allocated some time for you to do your weekly Project 3 playtesting. Now, what on earth does that even mean? Well, this is your first playtesting that you've done in this course, probably. And you have the entire span of the week to meet up with whatever other team number that we have specified for you here. So team 1 is going to meet up with team 2. Team 3 is going to meet with team 4. Team 5, 6, and 7 are all going to meet, and they're going to kind of like trade their projects. The idea is that you contact them, you find some time to meet. We've saved you the 2 hours of lecture. So, grab an hour or 2 hour block with them, figure out when they can make it work, when you can make it work. And then you're going to go and you're going to set up your project. You're going to show your project to them. You're going to watch as they interact with your project. And hopefully that will give you some insights into kind of what's working, what's not working. Scott and I did your grading on Tuesday, and we released feedback videos for you. So if you go to the grade book, if you go to your assignment page, you should see a comment with a link, and you can watch that video, and you can get kind of our raw, immediate thoughts on your project. You can get our recommendations. Don't let us design your project for you. These are your projects, but we've seen quite a few projects, and we can hopefully give you some pretty good advice on what you might want to focus on. Okay? And also help you understand the score that you're receiving and how you can get some more points next time. Anyone have any questions on the playtesting? You can do that in here if you want to. If there's a class going on, please be very quiet or maybe delay it a little bit. Or you can look at the schedule right outside the room. All right, good. I hope you enjoy those sessions. Okay, I apologize for not being here on Monday. I was very sick. We had quite an interesting experience. My family got the norovirus kind of one after another. And it's a very interesting feeling to watch a family member get ill right? And you feel very, you're very sad and kind of, you're very anxious for them. You hope they feel better soon. And then you're thinking, okay, but we've quarantined a little bit. We're not going to get it. And then you see the next family member get it, and the next, and the next. And pretty soon you're the final one remaining, and you think, oh no. Okay, not only are my family members, really hurting, and that really stinks, but you also feel the sense of doom. You're next. And in this case, I had about 1 hour's warning. When I realized I was the final person not sick, I had 1 hour before everything went crazy. And I exhibited the symptoms as well. So it was very strange to get a little bit of a warning, and then very shortly after, it started happening. But I was able to prepare and get set up, and everything was super clean, and I was just right there in the restroom. So anyway, I won't give you any more visual details, okay? That is not the kind of knowledge that you are here for in EECS 440. So I will spare you that, okay? All right, so if you look at where we are right now, we're in the middle of P3 milestone 2. We only have about 2.5 weeks until your showcase. Time is flying very fast. As I tell the 494 students, 3 weeks is a lot of time if you spend it wisely, but it's no time at all if you burn that time or make poor choices, okay? So we got to get into that grind. We got to do the best we can, and I know you're going to do that, okay? So I want to make you aware of another extra credit assignment that we recently created, and then I will answer your question, Keaton. The Ann Arbor 3D meetup, you've seen me shilling it and talking about it. The poster is right over there, and there are posters everywhere. But this meetup is about 3D art and animation. If this is an interesting topic to you, it will accelerate and improve your XR knowledge to know something like Blender. And if you don't know Blender, or Maya, or 3ds Max, just hanging out with people who do, and checking out their stuff, that is going to advance your knowledge and appreciation of the craft and the community. And so you will get a nice little chunk of points if you attend, and you can attend remotely, you can attend in person, but if you attend the Ann Arbor 3D Art Meetup on Tuesday the 7th in the evening, and you can learn more about that right here, then you're going to get those points, okay? Easy peasy, all right? Our first ever meeting, High on Life. Jeremy Fensk, who did some art for that, is going to be there. I think we might have someone from Pixar as well, a late addition to our industry speakers. So that could be really, really cool. We're going to see what happens there. Okay, question, Keaton?
Not on the screen.
Oh, it's not on the screen. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. So everyone watching from home is A-okay, but everyone here in person, you've been punished for coming in person. Interesting. Let's see here. Plug it in. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, come in here. Let's try this one. Okay. Okay. Hey, there we go. All right. Very good. So Ann Arbor 3D Art Meetup. If you look in the assignments tab, you can see that there's a new extra credit assignment. If you need some extra points, here's a good way to get them pretty easily. And if you don't need points, then rock and roll. You can come get some pizza if you want to, or you can just chill and relax. All right, so let's really quickly log in. It's very strange. I'm logged into Canvas, so why do I need to log into my account again? Okay, so before we get going with the XR and business lecture, I want to show you another one of those really cool local XR firms. This one is based in Royal Oak, and this is a pretty prolific company, a consulting firm named Vector Form. I think they renamed themselves to Launch, but I think Vectorform is kind of a cooler name. Did they get the launch? No, they did not get the launch like domain name. If they somehow got launch.com, that would be crazy. But this company, Vectorform, or as they're now known as Launch, this is a firm in Royal Oak, so not super far away, that do all sorts of things. They do applications, mobile applications for the utility providers. So they made a DTE app that allows you to kind of track your energy usage that a lot of people use. As you can see briefly right there, they also make VR and AR stuff. They make lots of XR things, training simulations, educational materials. They are another one of those firms that if your company needs an XR application or a mobile app, right? Does DTE have a killer mobile app team? Maybe, but probably not. And if they do have one, maybe they're super busy, right? So Vectorform is the kind of company that DTE might hire in order to get some extra talent going quickly. And for that, you're probably going to pay a premium. You're going to pay a premium, but that gets you out of having to support that team and develop that team all the time. So I wonder if the old version of the website used to have a lot more cool like display and video apps and stuff. Improving public safety with VR for law enforcement agencies. Very interesting and a very visceral use case. So law enforcement, right? Very, very difficult job, but a very consequential, important job. You need to make sure that you're not going to be overzealous and hurt people, but you also need to get in there and put an end to any violence that might be happening or any other stuff, a crime that might be happening. So it looks like the team has developed some immersive training specifically for law enforcement. They've taken a scenario-based approach, so they have different things that you can train on. They say that I have no idea how they quantify focus. Like, is there a unit of measurement for focus that I don't know about? Like a joule, but for focus. What does this mean? 4 times faster learning, okay, 275% more confident. When I see stats like this, I really want to see the paper that goes into the methodology. But typically, these kind of things are not very rigorously defined and collected. And so we probably can't get that. It looks like they have some custom hardware integration. So the team not only built software, but it looks like they also built some holsters and they built a way for you to kind of have a taser right out there on your belt, it seems. Interestingly, it allows a VR-enabled cartridge. Okay, oh, wow, interesting. So you put this into an actual taser, but it's not a normal taser shot. It's like a Bluetooth, probably battery-operated, tiny little box that looks like taser shot or a taser ammo, but actually it's Bluetooth, and so maybe that is what helps the software understand that you have done something with the taser. Maybe something that you're not supposed to do, or maybe something you're supposed to do, right? But pretty cool stuff. And so the takeaway is this. We've seen a few companies that do a lot of really interesting, diverse things. Vectorform is only the latest. If you really love working on different technologies all the time, a consulting, general purpose, diverse tech firm like this might be some place that you should look into. Vectorform may be working on games. 1 quarter, and then the next quarter you find you're working on XR, and then the next quarter you're working on some cool mobile apps and some other bleeding edge stuff. So could be super interesting, and I know that companies like Vectorform do not get the same volume of applications that a lot of the more well-established game devs and XR studios like Meta do. So for a first job, it might be interesting to look at. Okay, I want to show you kind of a fun, I've got a little announcement here. I want to show you a kind of a little fun video that pokes fun at Silicon Valley's kind of abuse of the Gartner hype cycle curve. If you remember, the Gartner hype cycle The Gartner hype cycle is this graph right here that basically kind of explains what happens with new technologies. Some sort of technological advancement happens, maybe at a research lab, maybe at a university, and then people start to get very hyped about it. Suddenly everyone is talking about blockchain, everyone is talking about LLMs. But then people begin to doubt. People begin to doubt maybe the AI isn't very good. Maybe the data centers aren't worth it. It can only do a couple things. It keeps making mistakes. Oh my goodness, it's a complete bust. And then eventually it kind of comes back and starts becoming a normal technology, which provides some incremental advantages and just kind of improves steadily over time, right? In Silicon Valley, in investing circles, there is often immense pressure to overhype whatever you are making, whatever you are selling, and whatever your mission is. And I want you to keep that in mind while you watch this particular little video. Okay, this is a high-tech Silicon Valley blinder solution. You know, blinders, the things you put on your windows. Okay, so let's take a look at the latest in blinder technology. And you can never forget. There we go.
A singular new design, a re-engineered system, and the finest material. This is Blinder 2.0. The horizontal slats are precision machined from high-grade marble, and the arrow wall shape minimizes drag to allow for smoother rotations of the slats. The new Blinder 2.0 combines the fundamental qualities of a luxury window treatment with revolutionary machine learning technology. The world's favourite blinds just got better, as it now comes in full finishes. Ivory white, eggshell white, Navajo white, and off-white white. The tilt one has also been completely redesigned to maximise its durability and to allow for a new level of precision. All this and more make the Blinder 2.0 the most premium window blind.
Hi, I'm Eric Wang, founder and CEO of Blinder, and I'm here to talk about something very exciting for the company. As you saw, we just launched our new series of window blinds, and that's just the beginning. Because not only is the Blinder 2.0 the most innovative window blind ever, it is also saving the Earth. Blinder's commitment to the environment spans everything we do, and that includes our window blinds themselves. Beginning last year, our maple wood slats are made with 100% recycled wood. And for Blinder 2.0, we're using 100% recycled cords as well. Actually, we're doing something even better. We know that our customers have been accumulating lift cords because they have to replace our blinds for every software update we push. So this year, we are removing the lift cords from the window blinds. We have much to share in the coming years, and I'm proud to announce that by 2030, Blinder will be 100% carbon neutral. Back to me, where I'll be talking about the company's vision. What is Blinder? Excellent question. Blinder isn't just another used car startup, though we offer value way beyond $1 billion, making me the youngest entrepreneur on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. But none of that matters. Blinder isn't just about window blinds and industry software. Blinder is about people. Blinder is about trust, security, and privacy that make a difference, transforming the world as we know. making the world a safer place through AI-enabled retargeting optimization and precise fixed retribution. I firmly believe we can only achieve greatness if we first achieve goodness.
All right. If you don't have context for this kind of thing, this is very much parroting the kind of tech interviews / reveals that we often see at big conference presentations, right? At the yearly, Apple developer presentations, the Google, I think it's called Google I/O. And what is being critiqued here is the authenticity of it. You're trying to hype up a product that is some blinders. They're great blinders, but come on, right? They're just blinders. The hyping up of the environmental efforts, right? A company that is really focused on making money may or may not really care about the environment genuinely. A lot of people see this kind of thing as marketing. And I'm sure that in many cases it probably is genuinely just marketing to make the company look a bit better. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that as fake as some of these things can seem, when you're watching the next Apple presentation where they reveal the next iPhone and it looks the same as the old iPhone, it's just a couple $100 more expensive, keep in mind there is immense pressure to kind of sell what you're doing as being impactful and very important. And, they've gotten very good at it over in Silicon Valley. So even if they wanted to be a little bit more down to earth and honest, it's not clear that approach would work. Though I have a sneaking suspicion that we've seen so many, society, at large, has seen so much of this that a more down to earth style might be extremely effective for a company these days. And one of the reasons I say that is the immense explosion of podcasts where people are supposed to show up, interesting people show up and just kind of act like normal people, right? And try and be as honest and forthcoming as they can. And that has proven extremely successful. So kind of interesting. AI is a spooky topic these days, a very impactful topic. It's unclear whether AI is truly going to take over the world, as many suggest, or if it is going to become a flash in the pan and fall apart, or more likely it's going to become another tool that we use for certain things and not for other things. But AI is starting to make the leap into 3D content generation. The EECS 298 students might not be super excited. Did it get deleted? I thought there was a GIF or something here. AI is letting you create 3D worlds in seconds. Here's a 6-second demo you need to see. I don't see anything. Where to go? So maybe it wasn't that great. But let me see here. 3D model generator LLM. I definitely have seen these before. There are research papers where these things are being shown. Can we get some screenshots, some images? No? Who wrote this paper? Where'd it come from? It's coming from a YouTube link? What? What on earth? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's watch it. Let's see real quick. Oh, it's just an interview. Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. So it looks like the AI-generated 3D models are fairly rudimentary at this point, but it's worth keeping an eye on. If people can generate images, the next step is going to want to be generating video, generating 3D models. Here's the thing, though. If you are nervous about, oh my gosh, right, we won't need 3D modelers anymore in the future. Well, AI is not very good at creating new 3D models. It's not very good at creating new images. It's pretty good at mixing together things that already exist, but it does struggle with innovation. It also really, really, really struggles with the specifics, and it hasn't gotten that much better at solving those kind of issues. So it certainly seems that you might one day have an AI model that generates a 3D model based on your description. But you still need to have the ability to go into that model and fix it up and make it the way you want it precisely. And that future definitely is one where we still need lots of humans, and we still need humans that have this kind of skill at a high level. So if you are panicking over this kind of thing, probably healthy, but don't panic too much, okay? Don't panic too much. Okay, does anyone have any comments or questions? All right. Okay, if there's one thing that has always been the case, technology is always advancing, and every generation feels like it's going to ruin everything, and it always ruins some things and not everything, okay? So keep that in mind. Our generation is not the first to experience technological disruption, and we will not be the last, and previous generations made it through, so will we. It's probably not going to be super comfy, though. I don't think it usually is. Okay, so remind me, where did we stop off last week on this topic? We talked about Capcom and Konami, traditional game makers that make games, as in products. But these days, when it comes to business, when it comes to venture capital, what people really care about are not products, but platforms, okay? If you make a great game, that's going to make me money for a quarter. But then it's going to dry up. So how do I make money after that? You have to make the next game. Well, it takes years to make the next game. And what if it's not a hit? What if it's a miss? So investors and big companies prefer the stability that tends to come from platforms that have a lot of ways to monetize and a lot of ways to get a consistent revenue stream instead of these one-offs. I'm not saying you have to like it. I certainly don't. I love the old traditional premium model, but that's what we're seeing. Compare the market cap of Capcom and Konami, 7 billion, 6 billion, right? Mid-billions. Compare that to Roblox, almost 30 billion. Fortnite, 32 billion. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy, okay? It just says it all right there. The times are always changing, okay? Loot boxes have become a thing. This idea that we're going to randomize the rewards you get, and we're going to give you those rewards when you pay money and sometimes when you play the game, okay? It used to be that you bought the game up front, a premium price, and then you would play the game to unlock everything. Now you can usually pay to unlock things if you want to. This is especially common in mobile games, in gacha games, where the game is almost always free. That makes it very accessible. But then there are lots of microtransactions and things to buy and timers and stuff like that. So the question that should be on our minds as XR developers, as engineers, is not necessarily, are these things good or bad? The more interesting question is, why did these business practices change? Can we predict them changing? Okay, and why is this changing now? Of all times, why didn't this happen in the 90s? Why is it happening in the 2020s? Okay? And I'm going to plant a seed in your head, okay? Plant a seed in your head. And I think I might have stopped around here this time. Did I get to the printers?
I remember the loot boxes. I can't remember how far back.
Okay. The printers are my favorite part because I think everyone can relate to them really easily. How many of you have a printer? Any of you have a printer at home? Printers, these things are evil, okay? And I'm going to get to them in just a moment, right? Ted smiles in the background. Yes, printers. Oh my goodness. So I want to plant a seed in your head, okay? So these companies on the left, these companies on the right, there's something different about them. There's something different, okay? On the left, we have Overwatch by Activision Blizzard, a third-party studio. On right next to it, we have Shadow of War, a third-party studio, Warner Brothers, and Monolith Soft. Rest in peace. I don't think they're around anymore. And then we have EA's My Beloved Electronic Arts Battlefront 2, another third-party made game. Now, these games tend to have a lot of microtransactions, loot boxes within them. They don't usually take a premium approach. They take a premium plus approach where you'll spend $40 on Overwatch, but then you'll spend a lot more money on other things within Overwatch. On the right, we have Sea of Thieves by Microsoft, Xbox, right? Rareware made that game. Horizon Zero Dawn by Guerrilla Games and Sony, first party. And Super Mario Odyssey by Nintendo, their internal team. All of these games are first-party games, and these tend to still use the traditional premium model where you pay up front $60 or $70, and then you get the whole thing. You don't have to pay for DLC. You don't have to buy any loot boxes. They're not even there, okay? So the question is, why would certain companies prefer the traditional premium approach, and other companies would prefer maybe the more accessible microtransaction and loot box filled approach, where the game is going to make money within itself and not just up front. Okay? What is the difference here? Why do different companies make these different decisions? Okay? You know what this is, right? Steam, the largest, PC digital distribution platform around. Do you know what this is? This is a harder one. Origin. Do you have a feeling like where I'm going with all this? Yeah. Okay, this is Origin, Electronic Arts' attempt to defeat and dethrone Steam. So the question for us is, why did Electronic Arts decide to create Origin when Steam already existed? EA was using Steam, and it was going pretty well. So why did they make Origin? What was the point? These kinds of questions I find extremely fascinating. Why did loot boxes appear when they did? Why did EA create Origin? Why is GameStop in serious trouble right now as a company? They have very little future. These are the kind of questions that can be answered pretty clearly and quickly via two very simple business-related tools: an ecosystem map and a value chain. And I learned about these tools from my professor in the Center for Entrepreneurship, Dr. Aaron Crum, phenomenal person, phenomenal entrepreneur and teacher. And if you have a chance to take any courses with Dr. Crum, I encourage you to do so. Very, very, very cool guy. So I want to talk to you about ecosystem maps. And the way to talk about ecosystem maps right away, I want to make you feel what an ecosystem truly is. It can be a bit of a sinister thing sometimes. Not always, but this right here. This is the Epson Workforce Pro printer. This is my printer, okay? The printer that I have at home. I despise this thing, okay? And I have a question. How expensive is this printer? How much can you buy this for? Any ideas? You might be surprised. Yeah.
Like a couple hundred.
Couple hundred? How about double digits? This printer was available to me on Amazon for $99, which is astoundingly cheap. If you think about it, this device has a lot going on, okay? This device has a touch screen. It has a Wi-Fi card. It has some very precise actuators in order to actually get the ink where it needs to go. Not only that, it has scanning capabilities as well. It's also engineered pretty impressively so that if it has a paper jam, you can open it up, right? You can refill the ink yourself. You got all these little compartments here. It's getting live updates. Extremely impressive stuff. It is taking digital information and encoding it, transcoding it into the physical world onto paper, many different kinds of paper, for $99. Now, these days, it feels like you can't go out to dinner with your family without spending $99. Okay? So how on earth are they selling this very impressive piece of technology for $99? How can it be possible?
It's the ink.
It's the ink. Let's talk about that ink, okay? The ink right here, this little cartridge of ink, not going to last you very long, might last you a couple months if you're printing. And if you're not printing, do you know what happens to this ink if you don't use it?
It's crusty or something.
Yeah. So the company is very, very happy because you can use this ink, and that's great, or you can not use the ink, and that's also great because it's going to expire. Ink dries out. It becomes unusable. So the company knows that basically every couple months, you will be giving them $34, okay? And if you think that this is pricey right here, oh my goodness, heaven help you. Heaven help you if you need color. If you need color, oh my goodness, you are in deep trouble, okay? How much is that going to cost? How about $70 for a single pack of color ink? $70. That is 2/3 the price of the hardware. Okay? I looked this up a few years ago. I think I remember the numbers. How expensive do you think it is for Epson to produce this product, this ink? The printer itself, the hardware is quite expensive to produce. It has to be assembled. It has a lot of different parts, some of them very intricate parts, very precise, right? How expensive is it to produce these boxes? Any idea?
$5.
$5? I'll give you a hint. The packaging is the most expensive part of the whole product, okay? When I looked it up, you know how much I saw? About 8 cents to produce that ink inside there. 8 cents. Oh my goodness, okay? Are you feeling it now? Are you feeling the business energy now? Okay? The margin on this ink is incredible. And this is how the company is able to kind of afford to sell their hardware at such a low cost. This is where the ecosystem map really, really helps us. An ecosystem map is incredibly simple. You list the name of a product in the center here, Epson Workforce Printer. And then surrounding that product, you list all the ways that the company can transact with you. That doesn't mean a bad thing, okay? Not necessarily. But all the ways that a customer can transact and trade value with the company. One of those is very obvious. It's the hardware. It costs $99. The problem with this ecosystem is that what you're seeing here is not viable. It's not viable. It can't survive long term because the hardware costs way more than $99. Chances are Epson is losing money on this printer, or at least they're not making very much. In the video game industry, Xbox and PlayStation were famous for selling their consoles at a loss. And then they would make up the money every time you bought a piece of software. They would get a licensing fee. Even if they didn't make the software, they take 30% at least. Nintendo is different. You've heard of Nintendo. Nintendo has a unique philosophy. They love to do interesting new things using old, cheap hardware, giving that old hardware a second life. And so, Nintendo is one of the few game console companies that never likes to sell at a loss. Maybe they don't make a ton of money, but they really don't like to sell at a loss. So, okay, hardware. We then need to write the other way that we transact with Epson, which is those ink cartridges. And notice, it's not just a one-time purchase. $30 to $60, I should have said $70 for the ink, the color ink users, every quarter. That is like Scrooge McDuck levels of money signs in the eyes, okay? Companies love this. Investors love this. And you get a much more stable and consistent and predictable revenue stream if you can get reoccurring revenue that happens over time instead of a one-time upfront purchase, okay? So this also explains a lot of things you might have seen in the news. Because ink is so expensive, customers are, I think very naturally and justifiably, in my opinion, always trying to find ways to use cheaper ink. And there is super cheap third-party ink cartridges out there, but they're hard to use. And the printing companies like Epson fight tooth and nail. They use technological methods, they use legal methods to try and prevent anyone from using these third-party ink cartridges. And if they can't prevent it completely, they try and make it as annoying as possible so that most customers who are not technically sophisticated won't be able to do it, okay? And you understand why they do this. If people could use dirt cheap third-party ink, what would Epson need to do? This part of the ecosystem is gone. What do they need to do?
Really boost the price of their hardware?
They need to boost the price of their hardware. Are we talking $300, $400? Maybe. And what happens if a printer is now $400? Are they going to sell as many? No way. No way at all. In fact, people might be driven to services like Staples or online printing services that can do this cheaper, okay, and on demand. And that would be a difficult situation for Epson. I want to show you and talk to you about a local startup and their journey to create their own ecosystem. This is my friend, a good friend, longtime friend, Craig Albert. Super, super cool guy. He is... if there's a new technology, he is in there hacking it up and making really cool stuff with it. He created a startup called Dreamgate VR. This is a shared space multiplayer VR experience. Did I ever show you this trailer? I did, right? Yes, question?
Was that previous image in Briarwood Mall?
Yes, it was. Absolutely. So before the pandemic, they had an amazing Briarwood Mall exhibition space, and you could pay $10 for about a 10-minute experience, right? So a little bit pricey. But you could play several different games with your friends and family, and you could see each other. Even though you're in VR, you could see each other because all of your backpacks had a gaming laptop, and they were all connected to the same online multiplayer game. They used Unreal Engine, Unreal 4, it turns out. I'm pretty sure they used Unreal 4. And they had a decent business going. And then the pandemic appeared, and obviously this was just not going to be viable anymore. So now they're kind of retooling the business and figuring out what they want to do. But their ecosystem map looked like this. It started off very simple. They had Dreamgate VR, and they were able to make $10 in a play session from each person who could play. Now, how many people can play at the same time? Yes? That's right. 4 can play at the same time. That is a pretty hard cap. That's a pretty hard cap on the amount of money you can make. Because if you have a 10-minute play session, you can get 6 sessions done per hour, or probably less than that. If you can have 4 players simultaneously playing, $10 per play session, your cap in revenue is probably about $240 per hour. And then you're going to have to pay to lease the space in Briarwood. You're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have to pay for maintenance and upkeep and labor to man the booth and take care of everything. The equipment is going to be deprecating, right? So this ecosystem is a good start, but it's not good enough. It's probably not good enough to sustain the business long term. It's probably not good enough to keep the founders interested and engaged long term. And it's certainly not good enough to ask for investment to try and take this everywhere, okay? So there are other ways that this ecosystem began to evolve. One of the natural ways that it evolved was when you play this game with other people, you look really funny. anyone who's watching is going to take video of you. They're going to take photos of you, and maybe that gets shared on social media. I know that when I played it, I immediately wanted to bring my parents back and let them play it because it was the most fun I ever had in VR. So there's some implicit advertising. You can't quantify, I don't think you can easily quantify and put a value on this, a number on it, but it is value being exchanged between the user and the company. But the team had plans to expand this ecosystem. The Dreamgate platform is what they were thinking about and working on and prototyping. The idea was that they would set up a way for others to launch their own Dreamgate VR. They would allow entrepreneurs living across the country, across the world, to order their own equipment, to order their own educational material, right? How do you run this? How do you set this up? And then Craig and his team, the centralized Dreamgate team, would provide new game titles, would synchronize and store all the player data for people who wanted to play multiple times, and would provide support. And then everyone else would go out and actually launch their own Dreamgate setups at malls and arcades around the world. And then Craig would take a small cut, maybe like a 10% cut of revenue, a small tax, and in exchange for helping that get deployed, okay? Kind of like a franchising model, if you've ever heard of that. McDonald's is apparently a bit more of a real estate company than a hamburger company. The centralized, like McDonald's headquarter company, they mostly license the McDonald's IP, and they also provide the supply chain, and they also do real estate stuff. But they let franchisors and independent entrepreneurs actually open and then operate the stores, which is pretty cool. I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful ecosystems to ever exist in all of history. This is the ecosystem that allowed Apple to become the first trillion-dollar company. It seems almost absurd that such a thing is possible, to have a company that's worth $1 trillion. But if there's any company that could be it, it's probably Apple, okay? How many of you have a smartphone with you right now? And this is really just where I get to see who's listening to me, because every hand should go up. And this is an incredible ecosystem. It has so many ways for you to transact with the company. And I think most people don't feel that this is very abusive, right? Apple people who have Apple devices, they like their services and they like the device. They like the ecosystem. It's a bit pricey, but they like the simplicity and the polish it all has. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you the first part of this ecosystem. Let's say you've got the iPhone 8. If you have an Android device or a different iPhone, you can use that, okay? The hardware for the iPhone 8 when it came out was around $800, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to take 60 seconds and I want you to think and reflect. What are all the different ways that you and the manufacturer and designer of your phone trade value? I'm talking about paying them money for some service, but I'm also talking about other ways that you exchange value, which isn't always money. Okay? All right, 60 seconds, and I'll go get some music on too. On about 2 hours of sleep last night. Oh my goodness. I had about 7 hours of grading yesterday. And I was sick too. About 7 hours of grading. 440 grades. And then that took about 2.5 hours. And then 494 grades took like 4.5. Man, a lot of games. And they're getting very good. So I had to play them for about half an hour a pop. And then the exam. The EECS 404 exam is on Friday. And woo-wee. All right, going to talk about that a little bit more in EECS 404 later. But designing an exam is a really tricky experience. I always really enjoy it once I get rolling. But if you've ever wondered, have you ever wondered like what it's like to design an exam? The impression I get is that a lot of courses just have like the GSIs create the exam. So it's like a bunch of grab bag questions coming out of nowhere. For my courses, I always create the exam 100% myself, and I grade the exam 100% myself by hand. That guarantees a certain level of consistency. I never liked exams when I was going through school that felt like it was asking for things that hadn't been taught, or maybe the exam had a really uneven difficulty curve, or it was getting graded strangely. Like, certain questions were being graded very gently and others were being graded very harshly. And so that's why I have to kind of do it all myself to try and hit that level of quality. Because exams can be really painful. And I never liked taking an exam where I did poorly, but I thought I knew the material in the course. I did sometimes feel cheated when I took some exams. Sometimes I simply didn't study very well for them, and it was completely on me. But other times I felt, that was not. It's kind of dicey, right? Yeah, I don't want that to be the case with the 404 exams. So we put a lot of effort into them. I think 15 hours is what I usually have to put into a new exam. And that's starting from the previous exam. So quite a pain in the butt. And then you have to hope that there's no typos and you haven't messed something up. Because after you print all that paper and all that ink usage, we just talked about how expensive that stuff is. You do not want to reprint that stuff. You also don't want to have to tell the students to correct the exam first thing. It just doesn't feel very professional to me. But sometimes they slip through and it's just killer. So tonight, on 2 hours of sleep from probably about 8 p.m. to about midnight or so, about 1 a.m., I'm going to be finishing the exam and then printing it all and then checking it all. I'm going to go home and sleep probably about 3 or 4 a.m. It stinks. This is why we get the summer off, to recover. Okay, so what did you come up with? Different ways for you to trade value with your mobile phone designer, whoever it may be. Google, Huawei, Apple. What did you come up with? What do you got? Let's go. Come on. Yes?
A lot of the time you're dealing on their own app stores, the Apple App Store, Google Play Store.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If this is the iPhone, the only app store that they're going to allow is the Apple App Store. And that means Apple is going to take a 30% cut of any purchase or transaction you make with those apps on that store. Okay? Crazy moneymaker. Yep.
It's not like a monetary one, but a lot of folks have their own utility ecosystem, like the camera and calculator and stuff like that.
Yep.
It kind of gets you hooked on that, and so come back, I guess.
Yeah, I've never heard that one before. That's a great idea. So if you get used to the specific utility app, the camera app that Apple has, and all the filters and effects and stuff, you might feel there's a lot of friction if you want to move to an Android device later. It's not going to be as good, or it might not be as familiar, right? What else? Other ways to trade value. We've got the App Store. We got utility apps. What do you get in the box when you order an Apple product? Do you remember? The product comes, and it's always a very beautiful, unboxing experience. Apple puts a lot of effort into that. You get other things in there too. Yes.
It's you have a product, but it's kind of specifically an Apple product.
Yes.
Everything else meshes into the ecosystem. Like you're kind of, I guess,
Well,
to that as well.
that's a very good one. I'm actually thinking about this, though.
I don't think I got this anymore.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. Well, the last few Apple products I've gotten have come with stickers. They used to, and maybe they still do, but they definitely used to give you stickers. They give you ways to show off to other people that you are now a Mac, not a PC. You're a Mac. You've joined the club, the Apple fan club, and you've left Windows and Android behind. That is the impression, the experience that Apple's trying to give you. And it wants you to be proud that you spent all this money on the Apple device. And so you're going to display sticker. That is implicit advertising. Fantastic. Good. Okay, what else? Yes?
The charger and the headphones, etc.
Yup. The official Apple charger cables and headphones, right? A lot of those are quite expensive. I remember years back when I was an Android user. Years back I was an Apple user and I decided to switch to Android. And a big part of it was that I saw that my charger cable, when I went to replace my charger cable, it was costing like $50. And I looked on Amazon and I saw a bunch of Android chargers for like $4. And that caused me to switch over. Now, I switch between the two ecosystems pretty often just to kind of keep track of them both and keep my experience level up with both. This is good stuff. You found a lot of good pieces of Apple's ecosystem, right? And these pieces are going to also probably be there for a lot of other companies. But let's go through a few more, because there are indeed more. What about iCloud? Have you ever heard of iCloud? iCloud, the cloud storage service. So if you start running low on memory on your own device, you can tell iCloud to start freeing up memory, and it'll back up your photos, your videos, your apps, all your data to the cloud so you can access it when you want to. And that's going to cost you about $1 per month for, I think, 50 gigabytes. Not a bad deal, right? And you don't want to lose that photo of grandma. And so a lot of people do it. And if you have 1 billion users, you might say $1 a month isn't very much, but for Apple at 1 billion users, that is a nice chunk of change per month. It keeps flowing, okay? And that's really special. The App Store, it was already said, they take about 30% of all those transactions on that App Store. These numbers you're seeing, 21 billion, that's about how much Apple reported making, I think, in like one of their quarters. Maybe it's per year. I don't quite remember. And I'll explain how I have these numbers in just a sec. What about Apple Music? There is Spotify. There are other music services, but usually the phone manufacturer will also allow you to use their in-house music service. So $10 a month, 11 million users, that's a nice chunk of change per month. Apple stickers, right? Implicit advertising. What about the developer program? So this is the craziest thing to me. If you want to release an app on the App Store, you have to pay Apple for the privilege of improving their own ecosystem, right? So as an Apple developer, I've got some apps out there, some games on iOS devices. Yeah, I have to pay $99 every year to Apple to keep my apps up on the store. Kind of crazy. Like Keaton said, if you have an iPhone, that really works extremely well if you have other Apple products, like an Apple Watch. Okay, and the Apple Watch has its own app store, its own transactions, okay, and all that stuff, its own hardware. When you have an iPhone and an Apple Watch, what does that make you want to get? What would go really well with those two things? If you had to, go to college and do some homework and write some papers.
MacBook.
A MacBook, ooh yeah, right? A Macintosh. And you can get some of these things, these products, to work with Windows or Android or whatever you've got. But things are going to be much smoother, and you're going to be heavily incentivized to stay with other Apple products as soon as you buy into one of them. And the Mac App Store comes with its own hardware, its own ecosystem, and its own microtransactions, its own app store, all that stuff, okay? So you see how crazy this ecosystem has become. Apple can afford to have a bad product launch. If the iPhone, are we at iPhone 16 yet? Is that one coming? Okay. If the iPhone 16 is a disaster and no one buys it, Apple is still in business. Why? Because they have a lot of other iPhones out there and iPads and Macs and Apple Watches that are making consistent cash. If Apple needs to go frugal, okay, if they need to go cockroach mode to survive, they've got a lot of recurring revenue. They've got a lot of ways for them to make money to keep the lights on. Okay? Where did I get this information? Well, as part of allowing companies to get big and take public money, one of the ways to counteract their power is to force them to release their financials. And so every quarter, if you are a public company, you are required to tell people how you're making money and how things are going. This is a pretty big competitive disadvantage, actually, right? I'm sure most of the companies would love to keep it very quiet, how they're making money, how much money they're making. But investors deserve to know how things are going. And it's also a way of kind of nerfing the power of the big public companies a little bit, okay? Apple is a $1 trillion company. I think they recently crossed $2 trillion or something. They've gone absolutely crazy. And it is a stark contrast to where they used to be. It's very easy to forget, but Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy not that long ago. And ironically, it wasn't Apple that really saved themselves. It was Microsoft, their arch rival, that picked them up off of the curb and helped get them back on their feet. Microsoft, I think, injected some loans into Apple, and then they said, we're going to bring the Microsoft Office suite, so Word, Excel, we're going to bring it all to Apple, and we're also going to I think, bring Internet Explorer to Apple. And why on earth would they do this? They allowed like iTunes onto Windows, and you know, why would they do this? Why on earth? Microsoft, is it just from the good of their hearts? Bill Gates is just a big Apple fan?
You can kind of start to like not merge ecosystems, but like kind of get a cut. Yeah.
It's not really what's happening, but it is an interesting idea. There's this notion that, well, Microsoft wants to make money everywhere. Maybe we can make some money in Apple's ecosystem. But that wasn't really why they did it. Some context. In the 80s and 90s, Microsoft was looked at as a hard monopoly. Okay? And the federal government was much more aggressive when it came to breaking up companies and enforcing antitrust legislation. So does this give you some ideas?
Did they do this so that it didn't happen again? They could say that we're not a monopoly because Apple's over there.
Yeah, pretty much. So if I recall, and I might be wrong about the timing on this, if I recall, Apple was facing bankruptcy at the same time that Microsoft was facing a humongous antitrust lawsuit. Bill Gates was being dragged to court and forced to testify, and he was being raked. The company was being raked over the coals in the media. And this is probably the worst time possible for your main competitor to be croaking. Okay? So Microsoft picked up Apple and said, okay, we're going to make sure you don't die, especially this decade. And so that turned out to be a tremendous business move for Apple. Apple was able to get it rolling again and actually surpass Microsoft and beat them in the race to the $1 trillion valuation. And I just want to reflect for a moment on the idea that in the end, like basically everyone, including the country, like really won out. Even Microsoft didn't suffer that much, I think. Yeah, they kind of got beat to mobile, but they didn't get broken up. And so I don't know. This is maybe kind of my plea for a little bit more antitrust action. Might be a healthy thing these days, even for investors, even for the businesses themselves. I want to show you an ecosystem map that's a little bit closer to XR. Okay, this is an ecosystem map for a 90s era video game by Blizzard Entertainment. This is a game called StarCraft, very popular. It was a real-time strategy game in which you control an army to defeat other armies, and it had a very big multiplayer component. It also had a great single-player story campaign. The ecosystem for a lot of games in the 90s and 2000s looked very similar to this. StarCraft. It's a $50 to $60 game. You purchase the disc, you bring it home to your computer, you enjoy the game. Now, there's implicit advertising that happens with this game because it is a multiplayer game. It has a big multiplayer component that was very successful. And so when you buy a great multiplayer game, what do you tell your friends?
Hey, play with me.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I bought this awesome game, StarCraft. The campaign is great, but I want to play multiplayer with you. Will you buy the game? And often that's how friend groups decided, which games to buy, which games to play. Now, there's a little bit more to this, not a ton, but a little bit more. Usually, a successful game would release, and if it was successful, if there was a big player base, there might be an expansion pack that would release maybe a year or two later. And that expansion pack would often be a bit cheaper. Maybe you could download it. Sometimes you had to go to the store and get another CD. But it was often $20 to $30. And it was, you'd buy it and then that was it. This was the entire ecosystem. Maybe there were some forums for people online to share strategies and stuff like that. But that was the entire ecosystem, the entire thing. Isn't that incredible? This was definitely a great era. I really missed this era. We had a lot of fantastic, fantastic games. All right. Same company, Blizzard Entertainment, but not in 1998. But now, in 2016, we have Overwatch, okay? Overwatch, a really fun, fantastic, multiplayer-focused first-person shooter game, team-based. No single-player campaign, just multiplayer this time. The game, despite years of inflation, what is that, like over 25 years or something? No, it's like almost 20 years, okay? Almost 20 years of inflation, and we're selling the game for cheaper than we did in the past. That's really great, right? Well, that's not the end of the ecosystem, because with Overwatch, you can't run it without launching a different program, Battle.net. It's a launcher, okay? It's a launcher program, and these are becoming very common these days. When you launch Battle.net, you can then go in and update and then run Overwatch if you want to. You can see all your friends in your friends list, but you're also going to see some other things, won't you? You're going to see maybe Diablo. Every time you go to play Overwatch, you're going to end up seeing Diablo. You might see StarCraft 2, okay? And maybe that influences your next purchase a bit. The holidays come, you got a bit of extra cash. Maybe you'll purchase one of these games instead of looking on Steam. Very valuable. The launcher technique is something that happens outside of games as well, okay? Have you ever heard of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? You might not have watched Ant-Man. How many of you watched Ant-Man? Anyone? I never watched it. But you're going to see Ant-Man in the big new Avengers film. And when you see Ant-Man and all these other characters in the Avengers film, what does that make you want to do? It makes you want to go back and watch some of those individual films. That is a launcher. That's an ecosystem. I want you to know that I put a lot of these ideas into practice, actually. So one of my goals is for no one to graduate without knowing about courses. I think it's totally fine if you don't want to take a course of mine or it doesn't fit in your schedule or your priorities or whatever. But it makes me very sad when someone graduates and then tells me they would have taken my course if they only knew about it. So the idea here is that if you go to any of my course websites, if you take any of my courses, you almost certainly know about the other ones. That is an ecosystem. It provides you a passive buff to all of your marketing and outreach efforts. Permanently, very little ongoing effort or maintenance costs. Very little, okay? And so marketing and enrollment is always my bugaboo. It takes a lot of my efforts. And, I teach a niche, right? University of Michigan is not known for game dev. I don't know if it will ever be known for game dev. I think it should be known for game dev. But got to keep those numbers up, got to reach people however we can. But that is an ecosystem as applied to courses, okay? And I want you to think about what could you apply that to, possibly in your own life? Or what ecosystems are you part of in your own life that maybe you haven't noticed, okay? That's not all with Overwatch, though. We got the game disc, traditional, good, premium. We've got the Battle.net launcher, which exposes you to Blizzard's other awesome products. We've got comic books, okay? Did you know that a lot of Overwatch's story and lore comes from media outside of the game? That is kind of a relatively new idea. There are movies and trailers. If you go onto YouTube, you'll find videos of people reacting. A react party for a new trailer that comes out. A new character is announced. I'm told there are some new characters coming pretty soon. And I'm very excited because one of my former assistants for 494 worked on some of the new characters coming. In fact, Ali Lava, she is going to be speaking with IGDA Ann Arbor. Our next big IGDA Ann Arbor speaker is going to be Blizzard, which is really fun, I think. That's going to be May, I think. So there are movies and trailers. What about social media? If you have a really great clip, you can send your clip, you can tweet or Blue Sky, the official Overwatch and Blizzard Twitter accounts, and maybe they will retweet you, right? You can get some karma. That's implicit advertising. They have timed events sometimes, like for Halloween or for the Olympics. And they have a ton of loot boxes, loot crates. If you want to spend money, they give you a lot of ways to do it within Overwatch. So again, compare how it used to be, how simple it used to be, in my opinion, how honest it used to be, and look at what it is now. So I sometimes critique and make fun of this approach. I really don't like the idea that you're going to start an experience and then the experience keeps kind of nickel and diming you. That really I think it makes it hard to appreciate the product as a whole and the art especially. But it has to be said that this business model has made game development and XR development dramatically more stable over time. The industries are having difficulty right now, but it feels like that's more of a larger technology situation because generally tech is having a difficult time. But what used to happen, the video game industry in particular used to be especially gnarly. What would happen is that you would work for 2 years on a premium traditional game like StarCraft. And you would hope that it sold well, because if it sold well, that would give you the money to keep going for the next 2 years. It's going to take 2 or 3 years to make the next game after all, and you just don't have much money coming in the meantime. So, what happens to your studio? What happens to your team if you work for 2 years and spend all your money on this great new game and it flops? It flops. It doesn't sell much at all. It's a bomb. It's a box office bomb. What happens? And maybe the game was actually pretty great, but you just got a bit unlucky. The timing wasn't right. Maybe a competing product that you didn't know about came out right before you. Maybe Grand Theft Auto showed up and just you got blown out of the water. No chance. What did you do? Yeah.
You kind of just lost your primary source of income like until your next success.
Exactly. Exactly, right? The video game industry used to be a much more hit-driven business. You needed to have a big hit, and that would tide you over for a while. If you didn't have a big hit, you were in big trouble. You had no revenue stream for a long time, right? You didn't have any real revenue until you made the next game, which might be 2 or 3 years away. Sometimes, unfortunately, the team would have to crunch for years at a time to try and get their next game out before they went bankrupt. And a lot of very hardworking people got ground up by that process. It was very unpleasant. It was very unfair, right? A lot of horror stories from the games industry in its earlier days. I think in new young industries, that tends to be the case. But lately, things have changed a bit, right? The games industry kind of depends where you end up, what studio you're at, because some studios still have that problem. But a lot of studios focus much more on a diverse set of ways to make money. Maybe it's merchandise. Maybe it's media licensing. Nintendo is in the film business now. They are in the theme park business. If, for whatever reason, the Nintendo Switch 2 stops selling, they still have Mario. If Mario needs to become a film, Hollywood-focused character, he can become that, if he needs to, okay? So, companies these days have a lot of ways to make money, and that tends to make them more stable over time. If Blizzard's next game launches and it's a flop, hey, people are still playing Overwatch, they're still buying costumes and stuff in Overwatch. At least we still have Overwatch. That can tide us over and keep us going until the next game comes out, and hopefully we can make a recovery then. All right? So that is something to keep in mind. All right? As much as customers might chafe at some of this stuff, there's a reason companies chose to go with ecosystems and platforms over products. It tends to make more money when it works. It tends to make money in a more stable fashion. And these companies, I tell you, as evil as they might seem, they do not enjoy laying people off. They don't enjoy crunching people. Usually, they feel very forced to do those things. And these days, thankfully, with these business model changes, that has been reduced a tiny bit. Okay? All right. Any questions or comments about ecosystems? Well, ecosystems, all right, they're really an interesting thing. I want to give you a quote from an anonymous Ann Arbor-based developer. In the past, the developer and publisher dynamic has changed. The publisher is usually the company like EA that pays money to the development team or the development company, which might be separate from EA. The fact that ecosystems and games as a service are a big deal now has changed the publisher-developer dynamic a bit. Because in the past, publishers could force really harsh deals on developers because once the game was finished, like no one cares if the development team actually survives financially. Now, like in the 2020s, if your harsh contract causes your development team to fold, then you lose your entire investment because you need your development team around and healthy long-term to produce more content for your game. You can't usually just bring on another development team willy-nilly and get them to start working, okay? Very hard to do that. So, again, the business practices of the industry have gotten a little bit gentler, a little bit kinder due to this business model. I also want to point out that a lot of games have become more accessible and cheaper to access than ever before. Gaming used to be an extremely expensive hobby, and these days it can be that if you want it to be that. But if you have a mobile phone, there are tens of thousands, millions of games on the app stores that are completely free. Many of them are pretty fun. Some of them are pretty generous and don't really require much money from you at all, if ever. And that just simply didn't used to be the case. For households that might be on a thin budget, gaming just wasn't something you could ever do. And I really think that is a shame, right? How many people didn't go down the computer science pathway? How many excellent technologists never happened because their family just couldn't afford games? I got into computer science because I loved Crash Bandicoot, right? I loved the PlayStation, first game console. I was amazed by it. A cartoon that I could direct. But if my family couldn't have afforded that PlayStation, my career almost certainly very, very different, okay? So I really appreciate the fact that if you're on a budget, you can get a lot of options these days. And then, of course, there's itch.io and a lot of free games on Steam. The indie revolution really helped out with that as well. So, all right, as much as I like to make fun of the big ecosystems and the printer-like practices, sometimes the ecosystems are evil. They're squeezing money out of you. It doesn't feel good. You get trapped in the ecosystem. Not good. The ecosystems are sometimes abusive. Sometimes they're not. And so just understand what ecosystems you're in. On the left, we have those companies that have loot boxes. They have microtransactions. They have battle passes. They have an upfront cost as well. 1,000 different ways to make money from you. Why? Because the game itself has to be the platform. Activision Blizzard does not have a game console. They do not have their own distribution platform, so the games they make must be the platform. Same thing with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers does not have Xbox or Sony or the latest Nintendo Switch to make money on. Their ecosystem will be super small unless they put that ecosystem into their games itself. That is why these third-party companies that tend to be a bit smaller, they don't have their own platform. Well, they make their platform by putting it in the game, okay? These companies on the right, Sony, Xbox, Microsoft, right? Nintendo can make tons of money by just sitting there and watching you play your Nintendo Switch. Every time someone buys a Nintendo Switch game, doesn't matter if Nintendo made it, they make a big bunch of money, license fee, I think 30%. So Nintendo doesn't suffer the same pressure to put their ecosystems into their game itself, all right? And that goes for all the first-party studios, and this is part of why you don't really seem to get that the pricing, right? The loot boxes, the microtransactions in these first-party platform holder game titles, okay? Has anyone been to, like, Disney? A theme park in general? Okay? This is an ecosystem. Okay? Did you know that Space Mountain, one of the most expensive to build, intricate rides in all of theme parks, beautiful, exciting, very pricey, expensive to make. How much does it cost to ride Space Mountain? Once you're in the park, how much does it cost? Free. Once you're in the park, it's free to ride Space Mountain. Now, tell me how much it costs to ride the Teacup ride. Zero. It's free. These two things cost the exact same amount of money. Okay? Isn't that crazy? Space Mountain, its job is not to make Disney money. Its job is to bring people in to the park. Okay? It is what's called an e-ticket. It's one of the biggest rides. It's the one you put in all the commercials to get people into the park. Once they're in, how do we actually make money? Space Mountain doesn't make any money. In fact, it costs us a bunch of money. It's expensive to maintain, right? Space Mountain doesn't make us any money. The T-Park ride the Teacup ride doesn't make us a dime. How do we make money?
Food, water, and merchandise.
Oh, yeah. All right. So once you've paid the entry fee and gotten into that theme park, we've got you. Okay? Disney has a monopoly on everything within those gates. They can price. They have incredible pricing power. They can make this T-shirt, which just cost them a couple bucks to print, they can make that cost $40, $50, $60, $70. And you're going to buy it. Okay, maybe your kid is asking for it. You're only here once, right? Once in a while, right? Maybe once every few years you go to Disney or longer. And you're going to buy that shirt, okay? So the objective is to get you into the ecosystem. And then when you're in the ecosystem, then we can monetize. Okay, think about that for a second. Because the same thing happens with Nintendo. Super Mario Odyssey is a beloved game. It took many years, I think at least 6-7 years, for some of the best talent in all of Japan to make. Expensive talent, big team, many teams actually worked on this game. And how much did it cost when it released? $60. That's it. No microtransactions, no nothing. $60. Do you know what also cost $60, I think? Mario Golf Super Rush. This is a game that also cost quite a bit of money, but to make it, it was made very quickly by an external team called Camelot, a cheaper team working fewer years to make it, a much smaller team, and all of their pay is almost certainly way less than Nintendo engineers and designers and artists, okay? Why do these two games cost the same amount of money? It's because this is an ecosystem. Super Mario Odyssey's job isn't to sell copies. Its job is to sell consoles. You buy the Nintendo Switch to play Super Mario Odyssey. This is what gets you in the gates. And then Nintendo is going to make their money with the cheaper products. They're still pretty good, okay? But they're cheaper. The margin is dramatically better, okay? And, of course, merch. And these days, films, okay? You can think of Mario as the ecosystem. If you buy a Mario game and you love these characters, then you're going to want to buy the merch. You're going to want to play the other games, the spin-off games, the cheaper games, where Nintendo can just boom, 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 get the most delicious margins around. All right? And then, if things go well enough, Nintendo can use those same characters to expand the ecosystem by opening their own theme park, like they've done at Universal. Or they can launch films or cartoons. They can do whatever they want. The hard part is keeping quality up while keeping margins juicy, okay? That's tough. And they have to keep releasing extremely high-quality products every once in a while to keep people in love with the IP itself. Mamma mia, okay? Good way to make money. So this has been known for a very long time, and it has, as a result, seeped into different parts of popular culture. This is a film called Spaceballs. It is kind of a parody film made by Mel Brooks, I think. One of the funniest men alive, I think. And he is still alive. It's amazing. I think he's very old at this point. How old is he? I need to know, okay? They're making 99 years old. Mel Brooks is 99 years old, and he just announced Spaceballs 2 is in production. Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, okay? And so hopefully that gets out before he kicks the bucket, all right? We'll see. But I want you to watch this clip. Yogurt, who is literally played by the director Mel Brooks, is going to explain how he makes money in his little temple. He's also going to explain where the real money from the movie is made. Okay? Is it box office or is it something else? Let's take a look. Here we go.
Wait a minute. Heard of you? Who hasn't heard of yogurt? Yogurt the wise. Yogurt the all-powerful. Yogurt the magnificent.
Please, don't make a fuss. I'm just plain yogurt.
But you're the one.
Yes, I am the keeper of a greater magic. A power known throughout the universe as the
Force?
No, the Schwartz.
Schwartz.
Yes, the Schwartz. But yogurt, what is this place? What is it that you do here? Merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Open up this door. Come, walk this way. Take a look. We put the picture's name on everything. Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. Spaceballs the t-shirt. Spaceballs the coloring book. Spaceballs the lunchbox. Spaceballs the breakfast cereal. Spaceballs the flamethrower. Kids love this one.
All right. So, yeah, a lot of this stuff, lunchboxes. This is like a stock plastic crappy lunchbox, very cheap to manufacture. You slap a particular sticker on it, and then boom, you can then now sell it for way more. Anyone have any Michigan swag in here? Okay, that hoodie, if you remove that Michigan logo, it loses about like 3/4 of its value. Okay? Ridiculous. Crazy. I really wish I could one day like make a brand. So okay, my tastes are a little bit strange. When I see a brand like Amazon Basics, I actually really like that a lot. It's a brand that's literally about being as cost-effective and cheap and frugal as possible. Now, how they achieve this is kind of a little bit spooky, right? Because sometimes, factories are a little bit overworked and in bad conditions and stuff and bad sourcing. But I really like brands that are like, we are literally your good, high quality, solid, but cheap as we possibly can be option. The point is to try and improve everyone's lives. And you do that by reducing the cost of important things, right? So, everyone needs internet these days. So a good way to massively improve the lives of everyone is to reduce the cost of that. Drive as low as you can without bankrupting the company or preventing further investment. And these days, so many brands like Michigan, Apple, they are using that logo on the shirt to really, I think, squeeze customers really, really hard. And that just doesn't seem great to me. Some of that needs to happen so that you can have a good R&D budget. But Apple has a fine R&D budget. Do they really? Michigan gets endowments and research grants and stuff. How much of the money made on that hoodie, the premium that Michigan makes by having their logo on the hoodie, how much of that really flows back to scholarships and tuition? And I have no idea. I haven't the faintest idea. But it does make me feel a little bit spooked. Okay, anyway. Yeah, I really don't like when you have a product, you slap a sticker on it, and somehow it doubles in price. It's you didn't improve the product by a factor of 2. The point of all this is to make the product better, and thus you can sell it for more. But I see a lot of companies and teams that are not making their products better, but are finding really not so honorable ways of making more. And that really kind of freaks me out a bit. Okay, anyway, my tangent is finished. Okay. Ecosystem maps are extremely important. Some of them are quite nasty, and some of them are very comfy and cozy. And what's important is that you can recognize ecosystems that are out there in the world, and especially when you find yourself within an ecosystem, you can understand what's going on, and you can decide whether you want to remain in that ecosystem or not, or switch to a different one, or try and use many parts of different ecosystems to maintain some independence. And that is like the Linux, developers kind of flow and feel. Okay, so all right, just bolting tons of weird different things together and trying to make them work together. That's quite a fun, if sometimes painful, experience. Okay, value chain. Beyond ecosystem map, we have a second business tool that we can use, value chain. It's very possible, and it's also, thankfully, very easy to understand once you start thinking about it. Timmy has $9, and he is an engineer on North Campus. That means he's going to take that $9 and he's going to give it to one of the North Campus eateries. He decides on Panda Express. He's going to give all $9 that he has to Panda. But Panda can't keep all $9, can it? Okay? That $9 is revenue. It's not necessarily profit. So Panda has to use part of that $9 to accomplish their objective, which is to serve the meal. And so, where is this $9 going to go? Well, it's going to flow through Panda. Panda might have to give $2 to the sourcing company that actually supplies their chicken, their rice, their noodles, the ingredients they need to actually prepare the dish. And they might have to give $5 out to the labor involved in preparing and serving the meal. So my question to you is this: how much money does Panda keep? You all, this ain't very hard. Just say it. It's $2, okay? And these dollars that Panda has to give away, well, they don't stop at the other companies either, or teams or individuals. They keep flowing. So Panda pockets $2 per meal, let's say. Now, you might say that's not enough, because Panda is thinking about investing some R&D and creating its own game studio, because KFC is releasing video games now, and we need to keep up. All right, we got to do something. We're going to need some money here. So what can Panda do? Well, Panda can decide that, you know what, we think we could run our own sourcing more efficiently than using these third parties. The third parties always take a premium for their services, right? It is like cost plus. And so Panda might take some of the money they have and buy out part of the supply chain. So now, in exchange for all that capital they just spent, they now pocket $4 per meal, assuming they can get really efficient with this part of the chain. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Chances are they pocket less than that. And so you have this kind of vertical consolidation that's happening. And so let's think about games and XR. Let's say you made a great game or a great VR or AR application, right? This is the game, the first game that all the 494 students make, if the context is missing. Rollerball, yep. So here comes the money, right? You made a great game. People want to buy it. That's really hard to do, okay? You did a great job. So Timmy is back, and Timmy this time has $60. Now, Timmy, unfortunately, is not going to come find you and buy a copy and literally just hand it to you, right? Timmy is going to go to GameStop. GameStop is going to get that $60, but GameStop has its own expenses it has to pay. Because GameStop, right? Oh, and by the way, you're way over here in the corner, okay? This is going to be real bad for you, okay? We got a long way. This $60 has to travel through heaven and hell to reach you. So how big is it going to be when it gets to you? It's not looking good, okay? GameStop is going to pass some of that money on to their sourcing team. Sourcing team needs to license to print the discs from Sony. Sony's going to take their cut. By the time it gets to you, you're getting about $15, okay? About a quarter of the actual value of the thing that you made. These intermediate numbers are not quite accurate. but my industry friends tell me that this number actually is accurate. You end up getting like a quarter of the value of a retail copy sold. Okay, how does that make you feel? You mean you don't like giving, a quarter of your game's value to this crappy company that's like actually harassing your customers, right? I don't blame you. So if you don't like the way that value is flowing through this chain, well, I've got some good news for you. Because technology keeps improving and the times are a-changing. There's a disruptive new technology out there. It's called digital internet distribution. Timmy discovers this PC distribution service called Steam. And Steam is another middleman, unfortunately, but Steam is only going to take a 30% cut, okay? I know that math isn't quite right, but so you end up getting $45 from every Steam purchase compared to $15 from every GameStop physical retail purchase. How do you feel now? That's a little bit better, okay? Think about it this way. If you make 3 times as much money from each copy, that means in order to make the same amount of money, you need 1/3 of the sales that you used to need. That might be really important to you, especially if you are wanting to make a game that's a little bit more risky, a little bit more creative, a little bit more artistically interesting, okay? A game that might not sell as well. Because when you need to sell a ton of copies to break even, you often have to make the most mainstream, like trying to please everyone, designed by committee game possible. And that kind of stinks, right? Artists don't really like that. So let's say that you dream of this mythical route where you collect Timmy's money and you keep it all because you are Electronic Arts and you need to at least try and find ways to improve your revenue every quarter, or your profit at least. EA has a lot of money. They got a lot of capital. So what can you do? A small indie team can't do this, probably. But what can EA do?
Make their own launcher to sell games there.
Let's make our own version of Steam, right? Let's do it. And thus, EA creates Origin. Now, they don't care about the middleman. They are the middleman, okay? And at least for their own games, they can now collect all $60 straight from Timmy. The challenge for EA, though, is getting people to put their money through this part of the chain. As Epic Games has discovered with their Epic Games Store, it's kind of hard to get people off of Steam. People really like Steam. The users, the customers love Steam. A lot of the developers are also, fans of Steam, at least enough. And giving away games for free and having Fortnite, via the Epic Games Store, thus far, not enough. Not enough to get people putting money through their part of the chain. But if EA or Epic Games can start getting more and more people to put money through their part of the chain, it's not just, it's even better than the good fact that they get to keep all the money from their own product. What do they also get to do?
Same thing as Steam.
Oh yeah. They get to tax everyone else who's coming through that part of the chain. Okay? Owning the chain, the value chain, is a very, very nice thing. And you want to be in a very in a very popular part of the chain. Okay? So when I say that I teach a niche, on the University of Michigan campus, that would be like, I'm not in the popular part of the chain. I'm like way over here. Okay? There's a hardcore fan base for this particular niche, but it's not a very big one, okay? So what's really interesting is that the chain owners, like EA, like Google, like PlayStation, it turns out they will actually pay the developer to get really important games because it's more valuable for Sony to make sure that Resident Evil 7 comes to our console first, instead of Xbox, instead of Nintendo, that we're going to actually pay the development team to make that happen. And I'm guessing Capcom got some nice deals. Okay, most people probably pay 30% to Sony, but I'm guessing Capcom probably doesn't pay 30% to Sony. Okay, they have a bit more leverage because they have Resident Evil, they have Monster Hunter, they have Street Fighter. And this is one thing I want to say. If you produce the content, you are king. Okay? So platforms rise and fall. No one can go and get Leon Kennedy into their game, except for Capcom. All right? And Leon Kennedy is popular and valuable as a character because Capcom invented him and invested in him enormously. Okay? Everything else is middlemen. Everything else can be replaced easily. But if you are making the content, you are irreplaceable. Okay? And that's usually because that's the hardest thing to actually do. Okay? All of this means nothing if you don't have great developers creating great content. So thankfully, in modern times, the people creating the actual things and doing the work seem to be the ones with the most leverage. This is also one of the reasons that Valve does continue to make their own games on occasion, right? And why a lot of the first-party platform holders make their own games. Nintendo could stop making Mario games, but then people might not care about Switch as much. And if people don't care about Switch, they've lost everything. They've lost Mario, they've lost their platform. Okay, so what happened to GameStop? Anyone know? What happened to poor old GameStop, okay?
Steam exists.
They got steamrolled, okay? They got absolutely steamrolled. Okay, I'm going to skip this really quickly. What happened to GameStop? The same thing that has happened to Macy's, Kroger, Sears. Retail. Amazon showed up and provided a really, really strong level of competition for purchasing stuff, right? GameStop, they got disrupted by a competitor who came in with a much better business model and a much better technological approach, and thus people stopped using GameStop. By the way, you know who doesn't like GameStop aside from customers?
Anybody who has to like pay GameStop or like
Okay, hold on a second.
not pay GameStop.
Does EA love GameStop? No. Okay, every game development team despises GameStop. They will work with GameStop because they have to. But they will be very happy about the downfall of GameStop because GameStop takes a lot of money for doing not very much. Okay? So when the game studios have a chance to put something on Steam or a digital distribution platform, they love to do that. And they love to kind of direct users to buy it digitally instead of physically. And when they have a chance to abandon physical and retail, they do. Okay, what happened to Blockbuster? Blockbuster is one of the most famous instances in history of a company getting cut out of a value chain that used to be very lucrative. What happened to Blockbuster? Does anyone know what Blockbuster is? Oh, it's just crazy. Every year I ask this question, and the number of hands that go up is just... When I started teaching, it was like everyone knew Blockbuster. Everyone. Blockbuster, what are they?
They were a brick and mortar store, not store. They rent movies.
Exactly. They were a rental shop where instead of buying a film for 30, 40, 50 bucks, you could go to Blockbuster and you could rent it for 8 to 15 bucks. And you could watch it for a few days, and then you would have to return it. Otherwise, you'd get charged late fees and eventually a replacement fee for stealing the thing, right? And customers loved this, right? It was cheap. It was a good way to get to try out a film without investing in it, because maybe the film's not very good. Maybe you don't like it, right? So it's really good for the consumers. The studios hated it. Okay, the studios did not like this. because they did games as well. The game studios did not like this. The film studios did not like this. Why? If I'm a game studio and I make a great game, Blockbuster buys one copy from me. So I get the value of one copy, and then they rent that copy out to 10,000 customers. Who makes more money, Blockbuster or I?
Blockbuster.
Yeah. And they didn't make the game. What the heck, right? That stinks. And so in Japan, this was actually illegal, which is why this kind of thing didn't really take off there, apparently, for games. It's also probably why the government of Japan decided to make it illegal. They're like, yeah, we got a lot of game studios over here, a lot of lobbying, right? We can't let you do this, okay? So Blockbuster, what you're seeing here is actually the last Blockbuster. They have a Twitter account, and it says Lone Blockbuster here. There's one left, okay? It was founded in 1985 in Dallas, Texas. They had 85,000 employees at their peak. Oh my goodness. This was a massive company. But their place in the value chain was extremely vulnerable. They didn't make the films. Okay? They didn't make the films. They weren't the actual studios. They were just a distributor. And when technologies changed, the middlemen get wrecked. All right? What happened? Well, it turns out they didn't provide very much value. A company called Netflix showed up, right? Do you know, you've heard of Netflix, right? Right? Pretty big FANG company. You might work at Netflix someday. They have a very big technology team. Netflix, I think, offered to let themselves be bought out by Blockbuster for like a few $1 million or something. And Blockbuster declined. If I recall, Blockbuster declined because Blockbuster was making their own version of Netflix, digital distribution, okay? Problem, Blockbuster is not a technology company, okay? Netflix is very much a technology company. Blockbuster's not. So what is Blockbuster going to do? Well, if you're an EECS 440, we just talked about that. You hire, wait, yeah, you are an EECS 440. I'm not talking the game engine architecture yet, okay? What do? We saw it earlier. You hire an external team to make it for you, okay? Do you know who Blockbuster hired to make their Netflix killer? They hired a pretty big company that did a lot of different things, some energy stuff, some software stuff, financial stuff. The company they hired to make their really important, like next generation of Blockbuster Netflix killer was a company called Enron.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no. And if you don't know what Enron is, it was basically a company that was fudging their numbers hardcore. They had a lot of really crazy accounting scandals going on. They were kind of sort of a fake company doing fake things. And they were doing some real things, but they were doing a lot of fake things. And so when Enron fell, it was like, oh, okay, I guess we're toast, right? And Blockbuster really wasn't able to catch up to Netflix and make it happen. So what happened is they got cut out of the value chain. Digital distribution was the future. That part of the chain was going to be the valuable part, and they couldn't make the leap. They couldn't jump across the tree, and so they got cut out, and they withered up. And now there's one left. This Blockbuster apparently is mainly like a tourist attraction, just like a historical time capsule. You can hire you can have like a sleepover there if like your kid wants to have a party or something. It's like, what on earth? Oh my goodness. Okay, so the takeaways, these are the important things. And I want you to be thinking about this because you are going to be going into companies soon. You're going to be going into graduate schools soon. What are you going to be studying in graduate school? I got a hint for you. You probably want it to be AI. Okay, that is the hot topic that's generating a ton of PhDs, a lot of money, getting a lot of grants from a lot of institutions. If you decide to go for computer theory, a theoretical computer science, it might be harder to get funding. It might be harder to get attention. The journals might not care as much, right? That's just kind of the way it is. It's super important, right? Theoretical computer science. And it's really a shame because improvements in theoretical computer science have massive impacts on everything like 40 to 50 years later, like sometimes after the inventor has died. Like the time scale is brutal, like no respect, right? They don't get the respect they deserve. But you want to think about where you are in the value chain. Another example, some of you might go to work at Amazon. They're a big employer, okay? Seattle's a really cool community. If you are at Amazon these days, would you prefer to be on the Amazon Web Services, AWS team? Or would you probably prefer, just from a career advancement perspective and stability perspective, to be on the Amazon Alexa team?
AWS.
Yeah. Why?
Because Amazon Alexa is like built off of the AWS. The entire internet's
Oh,
built
yeah.
off of the AWS.
Yep.
But you're pretty much indispensable.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. You're at a much more meaty, important part of the chain. So you're probably going to be a bit more stable. And, you know, I think Andy Jassy, the CEO that replaced Bezos, comes from AWS. And no surprise at all, right? You know, I don't think it's a surprise that I believe Satya Nadella rises to CEO from the cloud. And I think like the machine learning part of Microsoft, right? Super important parts of Microsoft. And so, like, you really want to be very careful, and things change over time. So Jeff Bezos really champions, I believe he really champions Amazon Alexa. Amazon Alexa, like the voice chat, does not make very much money. I think they've operated in the red for a very long time from what I've heard. And Jeff Bezos just retired and moved on. What does that make you want to do when you read that news? We're operating in the red. We've been doing so for a long time. The economy is getting tougher. Layoffs are coming. And our champion at the corporate level just retired. Uh-oh.
Expiration limit is not going to be that sentimental. Like, you're gone.
Yeah. You probably want to think about what other teams could I be a part of and make an impact on that might be a little bit more stable, a little bit more future-proofing, okay? So these things, right? I hope this has been interesting to you, right? Why did loot boxes appear? Why did EA choose to create Origin when they were doing just fine on Steam? Why is GameStop in a world of hurt? Okay? All of these can be answered with ecosystem map, value chain. Okay? If you think about them, they're really just kind of thought exercises rather than tools. But this stuff is very important. We have a lot of companies in the world right now. Many of them are getting bigger and more powerful. And regardless of how you feel about this, they are becoming more and more important every day. And so understanding them and thinking about them and learning the history is a very valuable thing. It's time well spent. And if you like this kind of stuff, there are two really good channels. Company Man, which loves to go into miniature, smaller documentaries about certain brands and companies and what's happening. It seems like the moral of every story for Company Man's videos, company wanted to make their big comeback. In order to make their big comeback, they need money. They take out massive loans. They spend that money on things that don't work at all. They are now just as weak as they were before, but now they have massive loans. And then the company folds or gets bought by someone else. That is such a shockingly common thing that happens. And it makes sense, right? Sometimes things just don't work. They just don't work. Another channel that I've been extremely impressed by is a channel called Modern MBA. And they've actually had some game dev and some XR stuff. They recently talked about the metaverse. Actually, I'm not sure how recent it was. But these are much more juicy. These are documentaries that are 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes in length about different companies. GoPro, why Texas barbecue joints have such a tough business. Okay, why ice cream is a tough business. It's very hard to make money in ice cream. Esports, okay, and how that has been a very difficult business as well. And so I've been extremely impressed by the quality of the documentaries on this channel, Modern MBA. I am actually a little bit shocked that they're able to get one of these out a month, because it seems to be a very high level of research going into many of these, and that stuff takes a long time. But at least they are giving themselves a month. I am sometimes suspicious when I see a YouTube channel that is putting out like really big, hard to make content every few days. It's like, how are you doing this? And are you just like copying this material? Are you like, is this accurate? Are you just like getting ChatGPT to feed you stuff? Like, I don't know. But I think this is really high quality. If my talk today interests you, definitely Modern MBA and Company Man, check it out. Okay, any questions or comments on any of this stuff? Okay, that's all I got. I thought we would be like, it's a long lecture. I forget how long my lectures can be. You know what makes them even longer? When I go on tangents, which sometimes I do and sometimes I don't do. I think I do it more and more as I get more bored of the lecture. And that's not because the lecture is boring or bad, I don't think, but it's because I've delivered this lecture probably like 20 times now in my life. I'm getting a little bit tired of it, actually. Even when I update the lecture with some new material, it's kind of like, yeah. So the only thing, you know why professors and teachers really want your questions? Because it's the only thing that changes from the last time they gave the lecture. It's like, this is the only thing keeping me awake. This in the Celsius. Oh my goodness. I'm going to be finishing the exam on like 2 hours of sleep after like 12 hours of lecturing. That stinks. Yeah. I wonder if the 404 students would like be angry at me if I just cut the final few questions. Those are the hard ones, by the way, the long ones.
I would appreciate it.
You'd appreciate it? I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in an hour when 404 begins. But I think the final few questions are going to be a bit easier than last year. I think it's going to be pretty cool, though. I've got a pretty great idea, I think, for what the final question could be. The final question is always some sort of communication question. You do something in C++, feed that information to Lua. Okay? Sometimes Lua needs to like inform C++ that it wants certain information, and then the C++ side of your engine needs to feed that information at the right time in the right quality to the Lua side of things. Interestingly, this is actually how a lot of system calls in Linux work. I've been studying the Linux system calls a lot because if we, hopefully we get to make the MMO course someday, and that's only going to be on Ubuntu servers. Or maybe I'll choose a different distro, but it's just going to be on Linux servers, no Windows, no Mac servers. And you're going to have to learn those system calls to do things with sockets. And what's really pretty cool is that, like, the way that the system calls develop is really nice and collaborative with users, as you might expect. Basically, the operating system provides certain technologies for you to use. And then people start using it and they realize this technology has like O of n scaling, which is pretty good, but not as good as it could be. And so then people bug the operating system to figure out how to deliver O of 1 scaling. And then the operating system does that. And often it seems the way that the operating system does that is literally the way your engine is going to do it, which is basically the user code makes a system call to let the operating system kernel know that we want certain information, we want it at a certain time, we want certain information only on certain things and not on other things. And often you provide a callback as well so that the, it's not a callback. You have a means of getting this information from the kernel. So you might call one function to tell Linux that I want information about this particular socket, okay, and this particular operation on this socket. And then you have another call where you actually go to check if Linux has gotten that socket or not. Or you can make that call, give Linux a data structure, and Linux will fill out that data structure with information. about the current state of things. I think some operating systems will also let you provide a callback, and then the operating system will call it for you. That's kind of cool, I think. But it's really just crazy to be like, operating systems used to be the super mysterious, very intimidating thing to me. They definitely still are. But the more you start reading about all of this, you're like, wow, these patterns just keep showing up. And by the way, the same patterns you find in operating systems, you kind of start to find them in like game engines. And the things you find in game engines, you might decide that you want to use in like a network analysis application. You'd like turn your network analysis application into a game engine. You're going to turn Wireshark into a game engine by embedding Lua. Why not? Yeah. Have you ever seen that like Microsoft Excel? You can play Doom in Microsoft Excel.
I think so, yeah. I know what can't you play.
Yeah, Doom is like this benchmark of expressiveness. It's a kind of a more impressive, visceral way to prove you've made something NP complete. And you have also made it, Turing complete. And you've also made it capable of rendering and detecting some sort of input somehow. It's pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to stop recording so that whoever's watching this on YouTube is like, what am I getting this? What is this part of is this going to be on the test? Right? No, it's not going to be on the test. EECS is a chill class. It doesn't have any tests, okay? So be thankful about that, all right? Your test is getting the weekly deliverable in, okay? The project in before the deadline. That's your test, okay? Okay, everyone watching online, I will see you later. Take care. Have a good one. And, yeah, I'll see you next time.